Okay, thank you very much. And as Doron said, I'm here for the year. I'm really enjoying my stay here. A disclaimer, I'm not a cryptographer. I've never been one, and this is just a hobby. I'm actually working, coming after this long administrative break, working quite a bit on mathematics that I do professionally. This thing, I've always been interested since high school, essentially about this particular story, and the first talk I gave on that was on my habilitation defense. Back then, you had to give a talk that is unrelated to your research, talk on mathematics, but unrelated to your research. So here you go. I've been giving this talk a few times since then. Right. So some people say, about mathematicians who have won the Second World War. So maybe there is some exaggeration to it, but I would argue not that much. Breaking of the Enigma code has incredible impact on the outcome of the Second World War. So essentially, everywhere, the Allies were fighting with the Germans, it had incredible importance, starting from the Battle of Britain, where thanks to decoded Enigma messages, the British usually knew quite in advance where the attacks were coming from, going D-Day, you name it. Even the Eastern Front, even though the Soviets didn't have access to Enigma, although they probably knew about it because that the British were reading it thanks to Kim Philby, most likely. Nevertheless, the Allies actually informed them about the intelligence they got from Enigma. And you have to imagine that during the war, most of the time Hitler spent his time in his headquarters at Wolfschanze, and they estimate that they could read about 70% of the messages that were sent out of it. So you can imagine how important that was for all the military activity. Right, so the talk will be on that, and essentially, when we agree that this, how mathematicians won the Second World War, which mathematicians really? So, so that will be also a story. Okay, so let us go say a few words about what the Enigma was. So it started really as a commercial device. So that was just sold. But then the German army started using its own version. 26, the Navy, and in fact, July 28, the Reichswehr, which was then, after Hitler got to power, renamed to Wehrmacht. And so that was when Polish intelligence in particular, and intelligence of many other countries, noticed that there is this code that is obviously a machine code coming from the Germans, and the efforts started to work on it. And what was special about the Polish intelligence, it was in fact the first intelligence in the world that hired mathematicians. Before, it was mostly linguists. And so a breakthrough, one of them was really to to hire mathematicians. That there were some events even earlier in the war with Soviet Union in 1920s that some mathematicians did collaborate with Polish intelligence, including Sierpiński. But here, okay, that was the decision of the intelligence to work with mathematicians. So it actually started in Poznań. The reason why it was Poznań, it's a city in Poland, but it's quite close to Germany. It's like maybe, I don't know, 100 miles from Berlin or something. So there were many people speaking German there. So they organized a course at the Institute of Mathematics. And so eventually, in September 32, they hired 3 mathematicians that had attended this course, Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski. And in fact, at the beginning, Rejewski was separated mostly from the other 2. And he was the one who was given a task to work on Enigma. So that's him, Marian Rejewski. I would argue, maybe you will agree with me or not after this talk, that this is essentially father of modern cryptology. Okay, so that's how Enigma machines look like. So essentially, like a typewriter, but it had, this keys, was a keyboard, and there were these lights here, so another set of 26 characters. So when you pressed a key, a light would show up. So that would be this decoded letter at a given point. And so obviously, at a given stroke, it was ruled by some permutation of 26 letters, which had this property that the inverse was the same. So it could be used both for coding or decoding messages. And it also had this rotors here, 3, that when you press the key, the first one turned by one, so after 26 times it was the full turn, and after the first this first one turned the full circle, then this one's turned once, the second, and eventually the third. So that was similar to the commercial Enigma. What was new in the military Enigma was, of course, the internal connections were different, and also this plug board was introduced. That I think back then there were like the 6 wires that were essentially interchanging interchanging a pair of letters. So this I will show you in a moment how this contributed to more complication of the right. Oh, okay. So that's I'm sorry maybe for this slide, because more or less this kind of lecture I recently gave to some high school students. So I go quickly through it. So we have a permutation group, and yeah, this I can skip here. And of course, every permutation can be written well as a composition of these joint cycles. All right. So constructing of Enigma. So what I said was essentially is displayed here. So we have this keyboard, as were this maybe I should plugboard connections. So 6 of them. Then it went through the first rotor, and so the permutation that really corresponds to it was given by that formula, where where n are the internal connections of the rotor, and p is just the rotation, so this cycle. Okay, so that's, and then there is also this reverse rotor that is fixed. Okay, so these internal connections, so there were these 3 rotors then, so that's more or less this number of possibilities. And then the reverse rotor, which was a special permutation. So of course it's a huge number, but these were the same in all the machines that were used in a given network. You know, at the height of maybe the war, Wehrmacht used probably about 100,000 of them. So even though this almost never happened, but the idea was that if somehow the machine, the enemy gets the machine, it will still be impossible to crack it, because then this is the setting of every rotor. It's 10 to 5 possibilities more or less, but those plug-bore connections actually gave a lot of more. So the idea was that even if the internal connections are known, then it would be still impossible to break it. Okay, so now let me explain how the messages were coded back in 32. So every unit had a code book. So for a given day, there were these daily keys. So these plug-bore connections plus the settings of every rotor. So that was from the code book. And then for every separate message, a coder had to select a message key. So of course, if every message was coded with, well, maybe not of course, but Rejewski writes about it that if every message was coded with a daily key, that would be actually quite easy to break. But no, every separate message had a different key. So the rule was, the system was that first the machine was set to daily code, and then with this daily code, the message code was coded and transmitted twice to account for transmission losses, and then it was reset to the message key, and then it went on. So that was when he started working on this. He noticed very quickly that the first 6 letters of every message are special, because in a given day, two first letters in 2 messages were the same, then so were 4th letters, and so on. So obviously, there was some, permutations. So if you have enough data, in fact, about 60 messages per day, you could recover this product of these permutations that ruled, how the first and 4th letters are interchange and so on. Now, in fact, a long time ago, I gave this talk in Germany once at Bonn University, and there was a remark that the Germans did a lot of stupid things. Of course, probably like everybody. So there were errors. the remark was that one of the error was that they coded too much. So they were actually, and it's true, they were essentially coding everything: weather reports, greetings, and the birthday wishes and things like that. So that actually gave much more material to work on. Right, and in fact, Rejewski remarked that it would have been much better for the Germans to not to code the message keys at all, because and just to give them as a free text, a clear text, because not only it didn't prevent it from being found, but relatively quickly, but also gave an invaluable information on these permutations. So, but we'll see later that this rule changed. So it was absolutely crucial that you know the work was done so early. You see, it's fall of 32. It's before Hitler got to power in January 33. Okay, so in fact, this was possible. So the first thing, it was actually went relatively quickly to find those permutations and message keys, because these permutations that you can recover actually had this special special property that always a number of cycles of given length was even. So that's an easy result to prove that a permutation has this property if and only if it's a product. It's a product of two pure permutations with this properties. I don't know what's the name in group theory for such element. What is it? Involutions, exactly. I knew it, but yeah, involutions. Okay, so that they are involutions. But what is even more important is that how to given x, so the permutations they knew at that time, how to recover a and b, and this can be done relatively easily, because then, of course, there are many possibilities, but it's a finite number of possibilities and not as huge as you would, otherwise. So the cycles of given length are grouped in pairs, and then for a given pair of cycles there are of length k, there are in fact k possibilities of how this permutations can be obtained. So once you choose this, once you choose this L that corresponds to BL, then everything else follows. Okay, so there were usually maybe several hundred possibilities for those permutations, but then, in fact, to find the right ones, that they used some, human psychology, so habits of coders. So at the beginning, for example, most of the messages would be coded with the same 3 letters. So that was the thing that, but later on it was forbidden. So the other thing, they never repeated any of the letters. So that was, and things like that. But I'm sure there were many more. Okay, so that's coming back to the slides that we already had, how the construction of this works. So now the next task was to find interior connections. So actually, back in fall of 32, Rejewski wrote down this equations. So this AI now he knew, you know, from various days, in fact. And so those AIs were, you see, just follows from this construction of Enigma that they were of this form, really, where Q is this Q is this permutation, take into account the second and third rotor and the reverse rotor. Right. So you know, assuming that only the first rotor turns, which was 20 out of 26 times, you had these 6 equations with, in fact, 4 unknowns. But that was, yeah, too hard. He couldn't solve that. And now a help from other source came, and this was France. So in fact, in early December of 32, Rejewski got copies of the code books for 2 months, September and October 32, given to the Polish intelligence by Gustave Bertrand, an officer with the French intelligence. And in fact, it's now well known that they were obtained from this famous now German spy Hans Thilo Schmidt. Some time ago I watched some French documentary on him. He was apparently the best agent the France ever had in the history of its intelligence. Unfortunately, they had not used the intelligence as well as they could have. He was a brother of a German general, so in the 30s gave a lot of invaluable intelligence about, you know, rearmament of Germany and war plans and so on. But actually the one on Enigma turned out to be crucial help. Right, so now coming back to this equation, once he got these code books, so he knew the settings from the code book. So S and alpha, in fact, became known. So out of those 4 unknowns, two are now known. So you can rewrite those equations this way, where in fact UI now are known, putting things to the other side, and then you can easily eliminate this Q, this interior one, and get the following 4 equations with just 1 unknown, which are the internal connections N of this first rotor. And then this can be done relatively easy. So the observation is that if we have a permutation of this kind, then of course this permutation is like changing variables. So it's like the same permutation in different variables, and then you can show that this equation has a solution X if and only if these permutations are similar, that is the length of disjoint cycles are the same, and to find those solutions. So for every cycle of a given length, there are exactly L possibilities of given length N. There are exactly L possibilities. So usually there were about, you know, several dozen solutions. One has to choose a common one to all 4 equations. Then this gives you connections of the first rotor, but to find the second one, they actually, because the code books were for September and October, so every quarter back then they were changing the order of the rotors. So in fact, in October the other one was the first one. So that's how they found the connections of the second one, and then the third one was quite apparently easy once that they held all that. So essentially they had now everything. There was one funny thing that actually historically is important, because in commercial Enigma there was also this fixed connections at the beginning that were the permutation according to the squared rule, and they somehow assumed it's the same in military Enigma. So these methods didn't work somehow, and there was, you know, a time of when they started doubting if everything will come up, and then Rejewski just thought of checking whether, you know, the identity won. Actually, so he guessed it, and then everything he said like was started, you know, coming. But he writes that he suspects that this thing might have been the reason that the British failed, because I talk about it later. So in '39, when they met with the British and the French, it gave them everything they had. The first question, this famous British cryptographer Dilly Knox asked Rejewski, what are the connection of the initial rotor or whatever. And apparently, I think it was his wife or sister in some memoirs says that he was extremely angry that so possibly was close, but failed. You know, and it was 7 years later, so nothing. Okay, so once they've done, so that was like late December '32, a month, more or less a month before Hitler got to power, where they broke the code. They didn't tell anything, neither the French nor the British intelligence, even though, you know, the role of French intelligence here was crucial. You know, then what they did, they made a replica of Enigma, developed some methods, maybe no time to go about them. To do it, this ANX method was funny because they noticed that many of the messages started with those three words. So this is from German an, and X is space. So quite a few messages were starting with those actual messages with those three words. So kind of assuming that they were looking for possible settings that would fit. And they were, you know, cataloging cycles of given lengths just to make a daily work easier. So especially starting in '36 with the German military power growing at a very quick pace, there were a lot of changes in Enigmas, and the increased numbers of plug connections, more frequent changes of the codes, even more frequent than daily, and so on. So, but they were keeping up with this pretty well. So in fact, they did statistics in 1938, and they were able to read 75% of Wehrmacht messages. But then there was a major change in the coding system, 15 September 1938, and some historians, including, I recently read a book by, I think Sir Andrew Jackson, I think is his name, a British historian. He actually, because like 15, 20 years ago, in especially British literature, there was nothing about Polish role in this, but he wrote about Poles, yeah, I think just fine. But he said that they were dark after this, which is actually not true, and I will. I wrote to him, and he promised that he will correct it in the next version. It's actually a pretty good book. This guy is, for example, quite famous for the biography of Churchill. Okay, so the change was, okay, these were maybe, since I will not go too much into it, but had they used this algorithm for coding messages, these methods that I told you about and that the Rejewski wrote, that they would have better showed them uncoded, would not be possible. So I guess this kind of methods would not have been possible with this system, right? But kind of quickly they developed new methods. So in particular, this famous cryptological bombs, which were several Enigma put together, and you can argue these were like beginning of computers, really, and so-called Zygalski sheets. And so what's important about those methods developed in this year between September 38 and September, well, maybe July 39, is that Rejewski in 70s, when he finally, you know, read about the story, how it later developed from the British side and the Bletchey part, essentially said that till the end of 43, the British were essentially only using, quite often improved, but still methods developed by the Poles. Only with this construction of Colossus, and he claimed that they really came up with new methods. But again, and that's again another stupid things that the Germans did. So there were various networks, the main one being Wehrmacht, but SD, Sicherheitsdienst, had a separate network, but I think with the same internal connections. But they didn't implement those changes then, so they could still read their network. And then in December, they introduced 2 new rotors. So thanks to the fact that SD didn't change the rules, they were able to find the connections of the 4th and 5th rotor. So this kind of things were lucky. Right. But the problem was that this method of reading message became extremely time consuming. So either, he writes, they would either have to be able to find the keys, you know, during a day. So to keep up with message, they would have to construct like 60 bombs, these cryptological bombs, which they didn't have means to do, or, you know, employ, you know, maybe 100 people or something working day and night. And I think for this their office, maybe about 10 people work there. Whereas, you know, Bletchey Park at height of the war employed 10,000 people. Probably half of them were working on Enigma. So that was just incomparable in scope. But my point is that really the methods were essentially the same. So now when the war was coming, and so the Polish intelligence government, I don't know made this decision, decided to share everything with the British and the French. So they organized this meeting in Warsaw in July 39, where they told them everything. This Dilly Knox was there in particular. They gave them the replicas of Enigma, and that was so. Then September 1st, war starts. The cryptographers are in fact evacuated to France through Romania. Britain declares war on Germany 2 days later. I think on the definitely September, but I think it was 4th of September that they hired Alan Turing, who did do some collaboration with MI5 earlier, but they really to work on Enigma started in September. So then those 3 Polish mathematicians, they end up in Paris, but it took the British actually few months to read first messages. That was after Turing went to Paris in December of 39, and all 3 intelligence worked together. In fact, Rejewski later remarked that we treated Turing as a younger colleague who had specialized in mathematical logic and was just starting out in cryptology. So maybe, yeah. No, but I think that was true, that he was learning. So in fact, in January 17 was the first Enigma message that was read in Paris. This, you know, and this is after that Turing went back, and that's when the British managed to read, you know, first messages themselves. This XYZ, in fact, there is there is a lot of course literature, and I will mention this in a moment on the British on Enigma, but there were yeah, 20 years ago. The item on Enigma in Encyclopedia Britannica didn't mention Poles at all. And so, I mean, essentially none of British literature mentioned. Yeah, there was some, maybe in American a little bit more. So now it's much better. Actually, there is a very good book written by a nephew of Alan Turing, Dermot Turing, and it has XYZ in the title. I don't remember the title, but XYZ refers to those 3 countries, that their intelligence and the collaboration. But I still think the accents, you know, even here, when you go to National Cryptology Museum, yeah, Rejewski is there, but maybe not such a central position as maybe she should have. And also that there is this part on Enigma in the International Spy Museum in DC. Yeah, is there, but maybe I would argue deserves even a more central position. So yeah, okay, I have never been. Okay, yeah, right, okay, yeah. No, I know, because I know a guy, Polish guy, who is even in some, you know, maybe not board or something. No, there is definitely huge improvement in that regard. But you see, the reason I'll come to that in a moment, where it came from. It not necessarily, it didn't come only from a bad will. It was just this tricky history, because it was so secret for, right? So many of them probably just even didn't know anything about the Polish involvement. So, okay, but the naval Enigma was very important, and Poles never read naval Enigma, and it was also more complicated. I think the system that they use up to 8 rotors and maybe different coding system. So eventually, and it was of utmost importance to the British to read naval Enigma. So eventually, I think they started only in May of 41 after physically getting the machines from some sunken U-boats. And if you go to this National Cryptology Museum here, there is a huge a cryptological bomb. So Americans were actually helping the Bletchey Park with the computations. Right. So now, okay. And then this is the Colossus machine 43. Some people say it was the first computer, but probably it was not, because it was not programmable. So I think I understand the first computers really were like early 50s, so some programmable machine. But these cryptological bombs, Colossus, are really what led to computers, because it's for cryptography that they were building this huge mechanical, these machines that were supposed, to solve one given problem. But you can argue that this is how the computers were born, essentially, and these cryptological bombs used in the 30s are predecessors. Right. So the world really learned about it in the 70s. So the first one was this French then general, Gustave Bertrand, published this book in French on Enigma. So the British had to, it was total secret before, Churchill memoirs, there is nothing on this, even though it was extremely important, and and the British were really masters of how to use it. That was, apparently every bigger unit had a special officer that could veto any operation if this endangered, revealing that they get it from the Enigma decryption and things like that. Right. So there is this first book by the British, by Winterbottom, and yeah, that's how the important thing, especially in the last book, was how crucial it was for the outcome of the war. But then, who really did what? That maybe took some more decades afterwards. Unfortunately, Turing was long gone by then. Apparently, he was very friendly with Polish cryptographers during those few weeks that they spent together. Yeah, by the way, you know that Turing was a superb runner. It's, I think 2:46 in marathon was his it's mind blowing. Okay, anyway, that's everything I wanted to say. Yeah, I think I have nothing. So thank you very much. Yeah, so in fact, before Germany attacked France, the British wanted the Poles very much, and there were letters between them. But the French wouldn't let them. They were working for France. But after the France was occupied by Germany, they moved to this Vichy part, and they still collaborated with Bertrand, was also working on Enigma. The Germans didn't, but by then the British were very suspicious of the French intelligence because there were, because of the German occupation. So I think that was the main reason. And by then, second part of 1940. They were already managing by themselves. But I think that's the main reason. So after even like 42, probably through North Africa. They eventually ended up in Britain, but never collaborated.
Oh, Rejewski actually went
yeah,
to Britain.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, one of them. So Rejewski died in '42 with on some ship that sank, but Zygalski ended up as a professor at some British small university, I believe. I think, yeah, for a few years, Rejewski maybe. I have to double check. Was in Britain, but yeah, he didn't have any role, and that was probably the reason that they were. And it was kind of it's also a miracle that the Germans never found out. So I mean, they occupied Poland, obviously, and there had been people who did not leave Poland and who knew about it. Okay, they didn't know how important that was for the British, but somehow they managed to keep the secret that this was broken. And the Germans were absolutely, certain of Enigma. They were sure it's unbreakable.
Well, I've heard that's actually one of the weaknesses, because when your sub is going down, you're supposed to destroy it immediately. No, you get off.
Exactly.
You know it's 100% secure, and that's how we got it.
Yeah, but I think they also had this kind of idea, that even so that looks very far-fetched. That if you don't get a hold on the machine, you still wouldn't be able to read it. Yeah, they didn't realize how much effort it can be put. And I mean, this is where the motivation for all this computing machines came from.
So, according to your timeline, this was secret until '73.
Mm-hmm.
And were they still gathering intelligence from it until then?
No. So I heard this. I actually heard from Turing. That I don't think by then. I mean, generally British intelligence is very secretive. I mean, they still haven't released all the information about the death of Polish Prime Minister Sikorski in '43. Some of it is still secret.
He's dead, though.
Yeah, well, right, but no. But historians are very interested in that, because it was probably a plane accident, but there are some suspicions, and that's because the thing was that he was after Katyń, and he was against Polish government in exile. Broke relations with Soviet Union, very complicated. Some could be for the British, or could be maybe not so bad that he crushed. Who knows? But apparently, the British were kind of reselling Enigma to some third world countries. I heard so kind of as this modern cryptology tool, so that they could listen. I heard NSA does similar things as well, right? No, and I heard NSA did this kind of like put some backdoor in some algorithm that was. But I don't know if that was the reason. It was only 30 years after the war, and it was like the most top secret thing. So that's why, right? So I think after 70s, of course, history of the Second World War had to be rewritten, right? And a lot of this is not just that, this with D-Day, this Garbo agent, these double agents that the British had. I mean, they played huge role in military operations. Also for American, the Battle of Midway, right, was a huge influence of cryptographers there, and many others operations on the Pacific, right? So that's.
Were there any other countries other than the French and British that collaborated?
No, not that I know.
Of course.
Well, but the Americans got it from the British, and they in the 1940, and they were actually, Turing writes about it. they really wanted to get a hold of it. And the British were kind of, but eventually were, they were on life support, so they had to relent, and they gave them access. Apparently, there are even some that on the Eastern Front. I heard some story that the Soviets captured some coders, German coders, and for some time they could read it, but only till the codes, so they didn't really, they were not able to decrypt it, just got the coders with code books, yeah. Right? And when those ended, that ended.
I've heard that your first two things on your slide there, that essentially, because they've been able to read messages, they knew the attack was coming, and that's why they had this meeting and got the...
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, although, July, the things were kind of fluid. I don't know if the final decision to attack was already... Maybe because the 26th of August was, I think, the initial. Yeah, possibly. By July, it was. People in intelligence, it was probably pretty obvious.
Were mathematicians ever involved in the production of Enigma on the German side?
Apparently, so I don't know much about it. The only thing I know was that I gave this talk at Bonn University in 2001. And the story was because I was at the Max Planck Institute then, and I had this habilitation that I mentioned. I mentioned it to some people. Of course, people like Hirzebruch, they only heard about Turing, nothing else. So they organized some seminar, logic seminar at Bonn University. And this professor that organized it, actually, he said that he had been to several talks on Enigma, but that was the only one that there was mathematics was explained. That maybe some retired German mathematical professor would come who was involved in some counterintelligence work on the German side, and apparently, later one was saying he was so happy that it was broken because. Yeah, that's why Hitler lost the war, but eventually didn't come. So I guess there were some mathematicians involved, but I actually don't know.
I'm thinking, I think we were using some rotor machines also, like the Heidelberg machine or something like that.
Maybe,
okay. They must have been trying to analyze them. So they would have had
you mean the Germans?
We were using a couple of rotor machines also. Maybe not exclusively Enigma.
But you mean the Germans would try to? Yeah, probably. Although if you look at the history of the Second World War, intelligence for Nazi Germany was not their strongest.
Just power. Right?
Yeah, it's just. If you now read history about the Overlord, the D-Day, it's just amazing how tricked they were with many things, right? So I don't know if they put much effort on it. Yeah, they were good, of course, secret police, Gestapo, and maybe torturing people and stuff, but...
Was there any cooperation between the Germans and the Japanese?
Right, so that's in
the system used in the Pacific theater was quite different, right?
Apparently, yeah, but I actually, up till a few years ago, and I even mentioned it publicly, I had thought that the breaking of the Code Purple had indirectly been influenced by this, but that's apparently not true. So the thing is that the Japanese did use their version of Enigma. They actually did buy Enigmas from the Germans. And use, but I think that the Americans were quite successful in breaking the Japanese codes. but I don't think this was related. So the Americans learned about all this in like probably mid 1940 or something like that. But I don't think this actually was a reason why they broke the Japanese code, because apparently that was quite different.
Yeah.
Also for language reasons, maybe. So I don't know much about it, but I was corrected by somebody in the audience that was apparently not true, that indirectly that they had influence on breaking of the Japanese code.
Well, in fact, evidence along that line, Chicago Tribune in 1943 published the fact we broke it in purple.
Oh, really?
And the Japanese didn't believe it because they knew it was so secure.
Oh.
But the Germans would have potentially at least read this and said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Oh, interesting. But then there is, during times like that, there is so much information, disinformation. So like,
not like today.
no, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, just the main thing is picking the true information. Even there is some true information out there, to knowing which one is it, that's hard.
Well, if there are no more questions, let's thank again Zbigniew for